Today, we are going to talk about how one single ship managed to create a traffic jam for the entire planet. Yes, and we are going to look at what its 6 day standstill taught all of us about how incredibly fragile the system that brings pretty much everything to our doorstep is. And look, this wasn't just, some boat getting stuck in a random river. This one incident, who can forget those pictures, right? It completely exposed just how fragile, how vulnerable our entire global trade network actually is. Welcome to the supply chain behind everything. I am Daksh, and we are going behind the scenes of the products, events, and experiences you love and witness to uncover the fascinating journey of how things reach you. So, why was this such a massive deal? Well, get this, about 12%. 12% of all global trade passes through this one super narrow man made channel every single year. Think about it like this. Imagine if 12% of all the highway traffic in the world was suddenly forced to cram onto a single neighborhood street. That's the kind of bottleneck we are dealing with here. And this number, this is wild. That's the estimated value of all the stuff that was held up every single day that the canal was blocked. We're talking about data from Lloyd's list that puts it at something like $400 million an hour just sitting there, waiting in a massive line out at sea. Unbelievable. Okay, so how on earth did one ship cause this much chaos? To really get it, we've got to understand why this little 12-mile stretch of water is, for all intents and purposes, the world's most important shortcut. Yeah, this map really says it all, doesn't it? The Suez Canal is the man made channel that connects the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. And for any ship going between Asia and Europe, it's the difference between taking a straight shot and taking a huge, expensive, long detour. So, what does that shortcut actually mean in the real world? Well, it means a lot of time saved. A trip from, say, Japan to Europe, that's about 22 days if you go through the Suez. The other option, you got to sail all the way around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. That adds thousands of miles and stretches the journey by at least a week or even two. And you better believe, in the world of global shipping, time is absolutely everything. Alright, so let's get to it. On March 23rd, 2021, this vital expressway for world trade just slammed shut. And what came next was this incredible 6 day marathon, with basically the entire world watching and holding its breath. The conditions that day were just nuts. We are talking high winds, a blinding sandstorm making it almost impossible to see or steer. And the Ever Given, this ship is almost as long as the Empire State Building is tall, by the way. It just lost control. It ended up wedged diagonally, its nose and tail stuck in opposite sides of the canal, completely blocked. And you can see just how fast this whole crisis blew up. On day one, you've got dozens of ships waiting. By day three, that number exploded to over 200, and by the time they finally got the Ever Given free, 6 days later, there were more than 400 ships just piled up in a huge traffic jam on both sides of the canal. And getting it free was this monumental effort. I'm sure you remember that picture, right? The one with the tiny little excavator digging away at the base of this absolutely humongous ship. It was amazing. It took a whole international team, powerful tugboats, special dredgers, all working round the clock just to dig out the sand and mud from around it. Okay, so the ship is finally free. But getting the Ever Given unstuck, that was only half the battle. This one event sent these massive shockwaves through the entire global economy. This wasn't just a shipping problem anymore, it was about to become everyone's problem. Yeah, and what happened with the Ever Given is a perfect, like textbook example of what's called a choke point. It's pretty simple, really. These are just narrow passages where tons of traffic have to squeeze through. There's no other way to go. And what happens when a choke point gets locked? Well, the entire system behind it just grinds to a complete halt, and the blockage immediately sets off a chain reaction, a cascade of problems. See, our modern economy runs on this idea of just in time delivery. It's super efficient, saves companies a bunch of money on storage, but the downside? There's zero backup plan when something goes wrong. All of a sudden, factories couldn't get their parts, stores were waiting for shipments, even livestock were struggling to get feed. The whole system is basically built with no room for error, and this was a massive error. And this is where it really hit home. Remember, This all happened right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the stuff that was stuck on those ships wasn't just, TVs and sneakers. We are talking about vital, life saving medical supplies. We had healthcare systems already stretched to the breaking point, and now they were facing shortages of critical equipment, all because one ship got stuck. So let's talk money. What was the actual financial damage for the 6 day global traffic jam? Well, the numbers are pretty staggering. To get us into the scale, let's just zoom in on one company, the shipping giant Maersk. New research estimates that they lost almost $89 million, and get this, their ships only made up about a third of all the commercial vehicles that were affected, just one third. Now, this is what I find really fascinating. When you break down that cost, the vast majority of it, $76 million, wasn't for things like extra fuel or paying the crew. Nope. It was something called inventory holding costs, which is just a fancy way of saying that's the cost of all the stuff just sitting in containers going nowhere but still losing value and costing money every single minute. So when you look back at it, the 6 day jam wasn't just some freak accident, right? It was a massive wake up call, a huge flashing red light exposing the deep vulnerabilities that are built right into the supply chains we all rely on every day. And this crisis really forced everyone to rethink how they do things. The big lessons are actually pretty straightforward. First, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, or all your ships in one canal. You've got to have other routes. Second, the whole just in time thing isn't great until it becomes just too late. You need to build in some buffers, some extra stock. And third, companies realized they need to understand the entire journey their product takes, every single step. And for us, the bottom line for you and me is this: a single ship stuck thousands of miles away can have a direct impact on what you can find on the shelves at your local store and how much you have to pay for it. It was a perfect illustration of just how interconnected and honestly how fragile our whole global system really is. So it all leaves us with one big question, right? A modern world is built on the amazing efficiency of shortcuts like the Suez Canal. It makes everything faster and cheaper. But now that we have seen how badly things can go wrong, are we willing to pay a little more or wait a little longer for a safer, more reliable system? That's the real trade off we are all facing now. If you've enjoyed today's deep dive on the Suez Canal crisis, a like, share, and subscribe to this channel would really help other supply chain nerds like us find the show. I am Daksh, and this has been the supply chain behind everything.